Hello, everyone. Happy to be with you. I am going to share my screen. All right. Hope can everybody see this?
Yes, we can see it.
Yep,
Great.
we can.
Thank you.
So thanks for being here. I'm excited to be with you all. Really want to make this as interactive as possible. I know it may look like there are a lot of slides. There's some that I gave you lots of resources because obviously we can't get as much done, in an hour. And so there are definitely lots of practical resources in the other handouts. So, but I want to make sure if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat and want to make that as interactive and as fun as possible. So my name is Ann Katona Lynn. I am an educational consultant coach supporting school districts across the state and actually across the country. And I used to work at Patton and Harrisburg, and I was also the state project director for Safe Schools, Healthy Students here in Pennsylvania. So I continue to do all of this work. So it's powerful and important. So as we get started, just kind of wanted to put some things out there. Like I said, ask questions, engage as much as you can, make comments. Just feel free to do that. Hopefully integrating some of this new information and being open to diverse views. And finally, hoping that you can utilize what you learn. So today, what we're going to be talking about, you're going to learn kind of why SEL is so critical as the development of soft skills and for kids now and in the future, because the challenge is how do we help them to understand what's important now as well as in the future, and identify how these skills and the college and career ready skills align. They absolutely align. And identify strategies and resources to foster these skills. So like I said, I gave you other handouts that have a wealth of different resources in there. And we're going to have a few activities. So we can't really pair up in a group, but I want you to think about what is one skill or characteristic or trait that you possess as an adult that you feel has helped you to weather your storms or that has led to your success. So I'll give you guys a minute, and if you could start typing some things into the chat, that would be great. Anything? I'm not seeing any chat.
We have a lot coming in on the chat.
Okay, just moving slow.
Yeah, right. I'm not sure if you have your chat panel open, but we have a lot.
I was trying to, and it's not, for some reason, it's not. I'm not seeing it.
And if you want, it's Alice. If you want me to,
there it is.
Give you an overview.
Got it. It popped up. All right.
Great.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Great. Time management, persistence, yeah, adaptability, great. Sense of humor, of course, Alice. Resilience, humor, yeah, absolutely. That definitely helps. Resilience, lots of empathy, work ethic, lots and lots of great things. No, these are wonderful. Exercise, yeah. Empathy, I think that is, that's definitely key. Determination. Wow, lots of great things. So, thinking about how important that skill could be and how it could benefit the kids that you work with. Just thinking about that how could you give that to them, so that you could really build that skill. Because as you see, these are all skills that are not taught specifically in school historically. So ideally, the goal is how can we foster these in kids, because it's a challenge. And I know one of the biggest challenges. So I'm a special ed teacher, And I mean, I'm not teaching now, I'm teaching more of the adults, but it's how do we do this with kids when we have so many other things that we have to do? But as we're going to see, really, these skills are truly the biggest and, you know, the most powerful secret ingredient. So why, the first part is we're going to look at is why is it that secret ingredient? So we've got this conundrum. We've got people with no skills. So obviously we've got, you know, little cartoon jobs, got any jobs, got any skills? I knew there'd be a catch to it. So, you know, again, we obviously having skills to be able to do any work is important. This is the other conundrum, the wrong skills. This one kind of is self-explanatory. Yeah, construction help needed, apply here now, as the guy standing there will work for food. So a little bit of a problem. So did you know that 42%, this is powerful data, I think, 42% of new four-year college students and 49% of students at two-year institutions take remedial courses because they are not prepared from high school to be able to be college and career ready. So again, it doesn't even matter where you're going to, or even jobs in general. I know when I was graduating high school and going off to college, I fell apart when I hit college. The first, you know, when I first went, because it was, there's so many skills that we don't even realize, you know, that we need. Being able to be aware of people that are peddling credit cards. That's just one example of how they really, really attack you. If you're not really aware of how to handle that, that's going to be challenging. Some more info, 46% of recent high school graduates with no further education are inadequately prepared for the work habits they need on the job. This is, you know, kind of what the research is saying. And we know that when kids get out there, when adults get out there, these are some of those skills that are missing. So these social-emotional learning skills are really powerful. What is life after high school? Again, it can be challenging. And so I think just recognizing that technology plays a huge role. So, you know, are we giving kids the skills that they need to be successful in technology? You know, obviously higher levels of literacy and numeracy if they're getting into something like a technology career. Importance of broader education and training. It's not just kind of the core academics. Yes, those are important, but it's really applying them to a wide variety of things. And it's kind of combining a lot of different skills. The value of the workplace and appropriate disposition. So having those you know, the personality, the skills to be able to relate to others. You know, again, a lot of the things that you all, you know, persistence, that's a big one, because if you struggle, you know, if they come across a failure, how do we make sure that they're going to be able to, you know, problem solve and persist when something is difficult? We can't just quit. So those are all really, really important skills. The dynamic of the highly competitive jobs, these soft skills, social emotional learning skills are those soft skills, are really the key things that companies are looking for. And obviously, you know, I don't have to tell you about the complexity of public issues right now. We're in, like, you know, neck deep in complexity of public issues. So that's another challenge. And then increasing individual responsibility for well-being. You know, I think recognizing that we really have the power to control our well-being, and helping people to understand that, as well as we can also support each other in our own well-being. That those are really powerful things to be aware of. So mission control, do we have a problem? You know, what we know is there's definitely a substantial leakage in each segment of the education pipeline. And really, the social-emotional learning skills, these soft skills, these college and career ready skills, are those things where we have the leaks. You know, we see the attainment of milestones. And I'm actually working on my dissertation. Literally, I'm going to be defending in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so one of the things that I'm looking at is kindergarten entry assessment. And are we looking at kids holistically? Because if we're not we can't just look at the academics. We have to look at every aspect. How are they learning? Do they have the skills to be able to learn? But what we're knowing, you know, just again, they're already coming into school with significant variations. And unless we address those aren't going to change, and they're going to get even worse. And that's not just kindergarten transition. That's every, you know, whether it's from elementary to middle to high, high to college, those transition points, that's where we often kind of things bubble up. You know, obviously, how we're comparing to international countries, and how our skilled workers are, how are they, you know, improving, and no accounting at any level of these important components. You know, we're not looking at human capital as a value as much as we should. And so, but there are a lot of companies that are really doing that a lot more, definitely Fortune 500. So when we think about what kind of better student, what we'd like to see. So, you know, this is one example: greater achievement, obviously better test scores, higher attainment, meeting entry level requirements for the next stage. The second one being, you know, competencies in the academic and soft, high level motivation and engagement and persistence, productive habits of mind, success at the next stage, ready for lifelong learning. Which one of those two do you think you would like to see more so? Which one do you think is going to be more successful? So just put a number in the chat. Three. Like it. Yeah, two, absolutely. Because, you know, it doesn't talk about that greater achievement and better test scores. So just recognizing that just because you have good test scores doesn't mean that that's going to make you more successful. I know, you know, again, on paper, I was a kid with ADHD. So on paper, I didn't necessarily look great when I first started college. I kind of fell apart. But I ended up, you know, here I am now finishing my doctorate. You know, I battled to get there, but just early on, I had one of my advisors tell me that I need to change my career because my test scores weren't good enough. And it's like, yeah, don't say that. So the more, you know, we can recognize that it's not just these numbers that we're looking at with kids, that we really want to think about what are these other things. And again, you know, you're recognizing. What about model 3? Who would be, any thoughts on what that would be? What are some key things that we're maybe missing here? I think some of the key things is that one of the key things, you know, is the relationships, that emotional, right? Exactly. Wendy, oh my gosh. Hi, Wendy. I know you. That social emotional health, and the interactions with others, the relationships, they are very, very big. So yeah, it's that how to talk with other people, relating. Yes, absolutely. So, you know, when we look at these ingredients, you know, we think about making any kind of recipe. I like to cook. Actually, I've been cooking more lately because it's a little bit of a stress release. And Alice is phenomenal at cooking soup, by the way. And so each ingredient, if we look at it, they can stand on its own. I love the chocolate. I like almonds, cranberries. We got, you know, kind of a variety of things here. You know, so any kind of recipe, technically, obviously, flour is not really a great thing to stand on its own, but all of these can stand on their own. But isn't it so much better when we actually have things mixed together, integrated, and baked to get this beautiful, you know, we have a couple different beautiful cakes there. It's the final product is so much more rich and beautiful, and also does its job better. Because I know I would much rather have a piece of cake than have, you know, a raw egg and all those other things. So, you know, it's really important how this isn't just, we want to make sure that we're looking at social emotional learning as not just an add-on, that it truly is one of the key things that can bring all of the other things together and can be really kind of a glue in many ways, and a way to address a lot of these other things. So, you know we have complex needs in education now. Obviously, the trauma that everybody's going through with, the pandemic and election and all the kind of things, the social unrest, just climate in general, the climate, kind of a school climate, obviously mental health. We've got a lot of things that are contributing to student well-being. And, obviously, if you all know that if you're stressed and you're not able to manage things, it's going to impact your academics. I know when I am really stressed, I can't work very well. And so, it's really important that these things are those non-academic, they can become barriers if we don't address them. And so just looking at some of the benefits, and these kind of go along with a lot of the things that you guys were mentioning, and the collaboration, communication skills. These are some of the things that when we're teaching social emotional learning, this is what we get out of it. So, these are kind of those benefits. And it is something that you can teach. It's not just something that you're born with. I know I had to learn a lot of these things as I've gotten older. So, we look at college and career ready skills, school climate, culturally responsive, supporting every learner, ESSA. We've got a lot of different things that are going on. And really, SEL is that process. This is the definition for helping kids and adults, not just kids. The more we help adults around these skills for life effectiveness, the impact and the outcomes are extremely good. So it's teaching us all the skills that we need to handle ourselves, our relationships, how to do our work effectively and ethically. And adult SEL has actually really come pretty front and center right now with everything going on, especially teaching virtually. What does the research say? So one of the things that I love about social emotional learning is that it absolutely is a critical piece for increasing academic performance. So students looking at this one, we saw an 11%, the research says there's an 11% increase in academic performance just by adding social emotional learning, that explicit instruction, seeing a decrease in the conduct problems, emotional distress, all of those things. So they are so powerful and they're worth putting in because you gain the time and the outcome back by adding it into what it is that you're doing. This one is from PDE, had a presentation and just pulled a few things from that. But we know, again, the public is wanting, looking for things that are more around teaching cooperation, things that we may have learned a little bit more. I know I was on a team when I was growing up. So, several teams. So I learned a lot of those cooperation and respect, not always, in the greatest of ways either. So sometimes in bad ways. So, the more we can teach some of these things, we can help prevent, not saying that we're going to give them everything that they need, but we're really going to help them to be much more successful and more productive citizens. Growth in jobs is really, it's really, for us to really grow, we need to look at that social emotional learning skills have really outpaced other, kind of that growth in other jobs. It helps to create stronger growth in whatever job it is that you're doing. District personnel, there's definitely a strong consensus. It's kind of the big thing right now is social emotional learning, again, especially around with the school shootings, principals, teachers, you guys everybody's really recognizing that this is something that it's something that's important. Parents, students. I have done focus groups with students in the last year, and it is unbelievable how they recognize that they really need it. And they recognize that it's not just fluff. They truly feel like it's pivotal to their academic success, even now. So I think that, the fact that, if we listen to the kids, they're telling us. These are just some of the changing demands, of today's education. We've got this 20th century model, really kind of the old, I looked at the one, clear penmanship. I know, I remember learning so much cursive, and there are a lot of debates. I went to 13 years of Catholic school, and cursive was a big thing. And I honestly, the only cursive that I use is my signature. And that wasn't necessarily conscious by choice. It's, again, just recognizing what are those things that are truly going to be powerful for them, and expanding on that. So looking at the 21st century model, really problem solving, the social emotional learning skills, critical evaluation, making sure kids are able to connect the dots on different things. So these skills are much more integrated. They are much more dependent on having social emotional learning skills. So those skills truly have an impact on academics and that lifelong success. So just some more college and career. The U.S. Department of Labor, most employers, so especially project skill employers, or skill employers, sorry, most look for in employees. And this is what it is, that learning to learn skills. Are we teaching these? Just see a comment, there are a lot of high school students don't know what a signature or how to write in cursive. Yeah, I'm sure. And again, I'm not saying we throw cursive out, but let's recognize what are the most critical things that they need to understand about that. Definitely starting young, they should be able to do their signature. My granddaughters are 8 years old and they're working on their signature. So it's an important skill. Learning to learn skills, not just being able to sit and listen and learn, but what do you need to do to organize your learning? What are all of those behaviors that help us to be more successful? Organization, those are some big things. Listening and oral communication skills. So obviously those are critical. Being adaptive. I know some of the comments were there, being adaptable, and those are big things. Personal management. Self-awareness is probably one of the most powerful things too, because the more we are self-aware, then we're able to improve things and kind of change things. So, that we want to improve on. I see Leanne wrote teaching cursive in 12th consumer math. That's good. Again, we need to be teaching these things. So group effectiveness, interpersonal, really teamwork. And I can tell you, I work with school districts, like I said, across the country, and there are way too many teams that do not have good interpersonal skills. It's not good. Being able to organize yourself. I think that alone, organizing your materials, organizing your thoughts, organizing, your work. Those are all key things that we don't really learn. And obviously competence in reading, writing, and computation. Those are some of the powerful things. But as you're seeing, a lot of these are much more around social emotional learning. Those are the skills. So the long-term payoff, these are some of the things that we see improvement in. This is a study in Seattle: higher graduation, better rates of employment, better emotional health, fewer with the criminal record, and also, looking at the cost benefit. We're gaining $3.14 for every dollar that is invested. I'm actually a trainer in Positive Action, which is a social emotional learning curriculum, and we are doing some work with the prison, SEI, where I live, SEI Cole Township, though, we're not doing anything since the pandemic, but the guys, we have a group of lifers that are teaching social emotional learning to the newer inmates to help prevent recidivism. So, again, it's powerful. Tier 1 colleges are really looking at these skills, and they're using more non-cognitive assessments. It's those social emotional learning skills as part of their entrance. So it's not about just the SAT scores. Again, that's historically what it was, but we're looking at kids much more holistically, which is phenomenal. Because again, I remember when I was going through school, it was all focused on the grades and all those things, and they missed, if I hadn't had other people who were supporting me and encouraging me, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, as teachers, it's important. So when we talk about how do emotional and SEL and college career ready alignment, how do they align? So CASEL has identified these 5 competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship, and responsible decision-making. So these are just kind of going in a little bit deeper. You know, what is it about self-awareness? It is really being able to know who you are, having that accurate perception, self-perception, and identifying the emotions that you're going through. How is your body reacting? That is an important piece. It's not just, you know, who we are mentally and emotionally. It's what are those signals that are coming up for us physically, and being aware of how our body is. That's an important thing for going to a doctor. That's a great skill. Recognizing our strengths and weaknesses. It's very easy for us to focus on our weaknesses at times, or, you know, or our strengths even more. It's important to have a balance and not feel shame with those weaknesses. Having a sense of self-confidence and self-efficacy. And the key is helping people to understand that they can, when they can understand these things, they can then control their environment so much more. I think that's so empowering. That's going to motivate people a lot with work. So that's we look at that first dot of the circle. So self-management is that impulse control, stress management, self-discipline, all of these things, you know, again, you can see, I know some of these came up, you know, in what you guys identified as some of these key skills. So these are generally the self-management skills. Looking at social awareness, this was one of those things that you all mentioned. So perspective taking. I've worked historically with a lot of kids with autism, and that is often a challenge. I think right now, because social media has created such a divide between, you know, it's kind of an us versus them in many ways. And it's hard for people to take another's perspective because we're not spending as much time face to face. Again, obviously COVID's having a greater impact on that, but just talking to people, you know, having empathy for others, appreciating diversity. So these are such critical skills, you know, like I said, right now, these are probably some of the most powerful things that we need to be aware of. Obviously, these relationship skills, these were some of the ones, again, you all talked about earlier: building relationships, working cooperatively, that teaming, those are all really powerful. Responsible decision-making, ethics, kind of ethical responsibility. What does that even mean? But problem solving, you know, situation analysis, making sure we're looking at not just giving up. Let's look at, this is when we have the persistence. This helps build that by when we have the skills to be able to look at something and say, I'm not, you know, this isn't working. Let me figure something else out. I think that's also extremely powerful. So all of these together, you know, they really, these are kind of the things that are underneath. You know, this one's kind of a good visual of sort of a plant that oftentimes what we see is we see problematic behavior. They may not even be outward. They may just be subtle problematic behaviors in terms of self-injury. That, you know, again, we can see a lot more around suicidal tendencies. There are a lot of different problem behaviors, not just those external behaviors that we often see. But if we really get to the root of the problem, those social-emotional learning skills are the thing that are kind of the causing, you know, they're contributing significantly to the problem behavior. So it's, you know, this is kind of an upstream thing that the more we can focus on the root of the problem, it's actually going to have a more significant change on the behavior rather than just trying to get compliance or, you know, getting kids to be responsive, you know, or adults. If we just kind of tell them, if it's like, do it because I told you so, that's not going to help. We've got to really look at the root, and that these are the you know, the foundational skills. So looking at Pennsylvania, the career ready skills. So they are sorry, they are really these are the soft skills. They're not the college and career ready standards. They are skills, though, and I can tell you there's a long history in Pennsylvania around even having these things. So they are socio-emotional interpersonal skills that have been trying to be put in place, but there was a lot of pushback politically. And so they're now couched kind of more in this career ready skills, but just know that really are socio-emotional learning skills. But they provide the foundation. They truly are, again, essential. They are the employability skills. And that they're divided really into 3 domains. And what they're doing is they're taking into account those pieces from CASEL. So we have self-awareness and self-management, establishing and maintaining a relationship, and then the social problem solving. So I see I have a question. These are all important lists of behaviors. Now, how do we get to the root of the problem? About evaluation techniques, some resources for surveys or checklists. Yes. And so one of the things that the handouts, we'll get to I'm going to show you some of the things, but there are absolutely lots of different resources on how to assess it. And sometimes it's really even just, one of the key things may just be a check-in, like some of the easy things, doing a formative assessment. The more we are aware of these as adults, it's easier to assess the kids that we're working with. Now, one of the other things, if you are using a validated social-emotional learning, as I'd mentioned, I'm a trainer for positive action, but there are, there's second step, there are paths, there are a variety of different social-emotional learning curricula out there. And so within those, there are tasks, and as they complete the tasks, it's again kind of back to that formative assessment. Yeah, the PowerPoint, there was a link on there, but so I'm guessing we'll just have to follow up on that one, Alice. I don't know. I saw the link on there for the materials, but just making sure that they're there.
We can follow up with the participants and make sure they get a copy of this.
Great, thanks. So yes, there are 2. There's a PowerPoint and there is another handout. So just looking at, again, the PA career ready skills, and what does it look like? Kind of where do they fit in? So this tier 1, it really is that having them throughout is truly one of the most powerful things. People are like, well, I don't have time in my schedule. If you put that time in there, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, or even 15 minutes 3 days a week, that is going to you're going to gain back so many things from that. So, just some considerations. Obviously, in Pennsylvania, that all students receive integrated PA college and career ready skills in their strategies in their classes. So there are lots of different things for professional learning, teacher evaluations, academic standards. So the Pennsylvania, the SAS, the Standard Line System website, has resources even on the PDE. But like I said, there's one document in the handout. It's like 43 some pages, I think, that I put a lot of different resources for you guys. And my email is on here. So, at the end, I'm pretty sure. So absolutely feel free to reach out to me as well, if any questions come out. But, there are lots of different teaching practices. Like I said, I gave you lots of resources, but these teacher processes, so the state and district initiatives are much more supporting the teacher processes, which then improve those student outcomes. One of the other things too is that Act 330 or the Chapter 339 plans that school districts, that all school districts are required to have, these these absolutely are the skills that are included in that. So it's really, again, these are not just add-on things, but they're really kind of critical. But we want to start with tier 1. Ooh, this one's kind of fuzzy. So just looking at this, the goal of tier 1 is to prevent harm. So it's those school classroom-wide systems for all students, staff, and settings. The more we just do things as part of how we operate rather than an add-on, that's the best way to do it. And the more we can have consistency, and that things get reinforced across a variety of locations, And the more we integrate. So as you can see on the bottom, we have the academic, behavioral, and social, that the more they are all integrated rather than looking at them as separate things, that's where we're going to actually see the greater success, and it's going to make your jobs easier. I'm a PBIS facilitator as well, and we're really kind of this multi-tier system of support, how to integrate all of these things. And it is much easier than people think. There may be some upfront work, but it is so much easier in the long run once things get integrated. You know, then the goal to the tier 2 is reversing those harm. So, you know, ideally having a universal social emotional learning curriculum. And then, you know, like I said, I use I do positive action. So positive action then can, you know, something like that, social emotional learning, there can be those specialized groups for kids who may not necessarily be, you know, making the progress that we want to see. So we can do some small group social emotional learning. And then tier 3, really having, these are these replacement behaviors. The more we teach social emotional learning skills, they are the replacement behaviors for those missing skills, for the problem behaviors that we saw earlier. Just making sure I'm catching up. So just, these are again the domains, and these are some of these related employability skills. So just kind of wanted to have some of these, you know, to show how they go along. So this is a sample domain in the college or the career ready skills in the category. So under self-awareness and self-management, you know, the related employability skills are down there on the left-hand side. And then what it's showing you is it's really a crosswalk to show how the different grade levels. So pre-K to K, that grade band, and then grade 1 to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. These are the different competency, you know, the different skills that we would want to see. So using this also as a kind of an assessment is one piece. It's just looking at, are we meeting these skills? So that's one aspect that you can be using. And like I said, the more you can use formative assessment, and the more you can integrate these into other topics. So like English language arts, absolutely. I know there are social emotional learning, again, positive action. I'm not doing a commercial. It's just, I know it the best. They have actually how it's aligned to Pennsylvania English language arts standards, so that you can see exactly, they absolutely go together. So if you're assessing those English language arts standards, you're able to then assess social emotional learning skills as part of that. So, you know, we want to think about working smarter, not harder. You know, but some of these, you can absolutely build them into other academics that we don't want it to feel like it's on top of what you're already doing. So just sort of a conceptual framework in that, you know, Ed talked about, it's kind of that multi-tier system of support. The real situation that is the best, this framework of having that multi-tier system of support where it is, you know, there's coordinated school, family, and community programming, really, truly effectively integrated. That has a huge impact on socio-emotional learning. And then obviously the outcomes for that, when we are focusing on that socio-emotional and academic learning together, we're seeing kids that are going to be much more academically successful, healthy, good social relationships, engaged citizens. And I mentioned that earlier. These are outcomes that obviously benefit the entire community. The link to get some of the other resources, the PDE. Yeah, if you go to the Office of Safe Schools, I think, but if you just put in PDE, college or career ready skills, not standards, career ready skills. There are lots of different resources on there. Some of them I've also, and actually I have links in the document as well. So some of those, and I even have them listed here coming up. So now let's talk about some strategies. So thinking of social emotional learning is kind of, we have it as a three-legged stool. So we want to look at culture and climate. How do we integrate it and fuse it into existing instruction? And then how do we do direct instruction? The important thing is that we really need to look at all three of those. If you're doing something like positive behavior interventions and supports or school climate, those are all, we're already kind of embedding social emotional learning, and they are the vehicles. We don't want to think about just adding another thing. We don't want to have another silo, because that's even more stress for you all. So it's, staff working smarter, and your all emotional health and wellness are critical to this work. So, looking at this one, is this a safe climate? We think about just climate in general. This is kind of a chaotic, party store. There are lots of things going on, people all over the place, long lines. This one is a much more, obviously it's organized, it's easier to find things. It's a safe, respectful, engaging and well-managed location. So the climate is much better there. It would be a place that you would much rather shop there, just because it's less stressful. So, organization, that climate in general are powerful. So, and I've talked about the multi-tier system of support. So for anything that we're doing around these college and career ready skills, these soft skills, social emotional learning, a framework is absolutely critical. When you think about building a house or a bookshelf, all of these core things, if you have a problem with your electrical system in your house, it's going to affect everything. Obviously, you could have a fire and burn down. So having a strong framework is a critical piece. And if we aren't careful, this is kind of what we can get. So, things can be extremely chaotic if we don't use a framework. And using a multi-tier system of support framework, it is the infrastructure that everything fits in. And that's the way we would integrate things. So, this is that integration, looking at, we want to have a validated core resource. So in English language arts, math, that's kind of, again, the academic. And I had already mentioned that ELA and social emotional learning are already aligned. They already go together. So, in looking at the social emotional learning, we want to look at a validated curriculum. And, there are lots of different resources out there. Again, I'm happy to share any of those resources as well. Positive behavior intervention supports, they don't need to all be separate. We have been using a social emotional learning curriculum to teach the positive behavior supports. And what we see is that it helps kind of beef up the positive behavior support, because you're able to say, all right, we've got a change in the external behaviors, and you may be using, you're using that external motivation. The social emotional learning piece, what it does is it adds value of building internal motivation. And so that's the key. So when you're using the two together, that's where we really see the power of change happening. And obviously the intensity, we want to do more low intensity because we're going to be much more successful. And as you can see, excellence, equity, engagement are all absolutely foundational pieces as part of the infrastructure. And culturally responsive teaching, obviously blended learning, we have personalized learning, differentiation, all of those things support the excellence, equity, and engagement. So it's a way to engage kids as well. And it's the social emotional learning skills are getting them more engaged in academics. So just a kind of a model of prevention is having a trauma-informed and equity lens. So I already talked about PBIS. PBIS has the structure. That's kind of the building structure, because it is an example of a multi-tier system of support. Social emotional learning is the support that you can add to PBIS to make it that much stronger. And positive school climate, this you're going to get these outcomes. One of the things, Pennsylvania has school climate surveys. There are lots of different things out there. The challenge is, how do people use them effectively? Because there's so many different tools. So, if there is you can sometimes just add some small things to a school climate survey that could measure a variety of things, or looking at what are they already measuring, rather than saying, oh, we need a separate assessment for this. Now, there are going to be some pieces that are specific to specific areas, but we want to try and figure out how can we look at all of it together and make it much more effective. But what we know is we see decreasing internalizing problems and external. It's those, externalizing outward behaviors, internalizing are those, the self deprecation, could be suicidal tendencies. So just, obviously there are lots of things going on. We've got impacts of lots of different trauma, uncertainty from COVID, obviously the racial injustice, there's a lot going on. So, we look at, these are just some other ways of creating a positive in school culture and climate. So we've got safe and drug-free schools, PBIS, the climate survey, social, they are kind of that climate piece. So what are some other things that you all are doing that would help with creating a positive culture and climate at your site that they may already be doing? Anything other than these? Leader and Me, yep. Yes, absolutely. Daily SEL lessons, great. SAP, using PBIS, great. SAP is, again, it's helping to recognize that's really kind of coming into that tier 2, but it's absolutely a powerful component of this. Girls on the Run, yep. Different clubs, yeah. PBIS, so great. Those are already things. Again, we don't need to think about adding another thing. You guys are already overwhelmed. We've got to think about how can we integrate them so we're being much more effective. So, looking at a student profile, looking at all of these different aspects. How are they? We look at them academically. But let's look at, we've got adult relationships, anger management, they may be doing really well, problem solving, anxiety, asking for assistance, and they may need a little bit more help. Peer relations doing pretty well. Working independently, they're struggling a little. And then on the top, we've got some attendance issues and distracting others. So, and obviously the language arts are going right along with that. And so, again, you're seeing the other academic pieces. If we looked at this student, we can absolutely see, oh, thank you, Jean. Great, wonderful. So we can see how all of these things go together. This is not a student that's like, okay, these are their academic problems and these are their socio-emotional and these are the behavior. This is a student profile. We are whole people. And so we have to look at kids that way. And that's how we want to function in a school, is how do we do it holistically? It can be scary because there are lots of silos, but it's so critical to break down the silos so that we can work much more effectively. But this is not just for the kids. What does our own social, emotional, academic, what does our profile look like? I know there are definitely some days that my focus is horrible. So, there's some things that I'm really good at. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we want to build on our strengths and look at our weaknesses and identify what we can do, rather than just going, that's how they are. Let's figure out what we can do differently. So now let's look at the direct instruction piece. We've got the direct instruction of, we want to think about academic and socio-emotional wellness, that mental health piece, and organizational health of the workforce. All of those go together as an equal priority. That's where we're really going to see the outcomes. It can't just be academic rigor. It absolutely has to be all aspects to truly see the impact. So some ways that these are best practices for the way they're being instructed for social skills instruction. So sequenced, again, a lot of curriculum, if they already have, they may have a scope and sequence. Using active forms of learning, active engagement, focused attention. One of the great things about about using social emotional learning, if you do it first part of the day, again, it can be 15 to 20 minutes, the very beginning of your day. When you do that, you're going to gain that time back significantly for the rest of the day. It's setting the stage for how they're going to operate for the rest of the day. So it really kind of, we don't want to just put it in as a side, like, oh, if we have time, we'll get to it. You really want it to be focused, that you put it into your curriculum. Again, you're going to gain it academically and in other ways. And then explicit, looking at, so this kind of comes back to the assessments. If we've got kids that are struggling, how do we make sure we know what those skills are so that we can then target them for instruction? So this is, we've got some direct instruction of skills. These are some examples. These are kind of the main categories. So we've got, freestanding lessons. You can have general teaching practices. So again, they are just embedded in how you operate. Integration with the academics. And I talked about ELA. And then guidance on establishing SEL as a school-wide initiative. CASEL has lots of different things. And again, I'm more than happy, like I said, my email, you can reach out to me, but there are lots and lots of really good things now that are helping to support this. So, Pennsylvania has, has a lot of resources, and obviously Jean shared the link. So those are some different things, but there are a lot of lessons that have, things that are embedded. So these are some example practices. And what I said, like I said, that the extra handout has lots of links and even examples of some of these resources. Whoops. And we're gonna, we don't have time to look at this. But what I can do is I have a lesson on embedding a social emotional learning. So just some activities. These are some activities that you can look at. There's an intensity of feeling chart that I did include, and actually it's the next slide. This is something to kind of think about, how to build self-awareness with kids, thinking of just, again, just really in the middle of, you can throw things out at any time. So how are you feeling today? Zones of regulations are absolutely something. And again, I have a lot of those included in the handout. Here's one, Read My Many Colored Days by Dr. Seuss. And there's actually a video version of the book. So, again, each day, ask the students to tell you what color that they are that day. So again, this is kind of going along with zones of regulation. This is the intensity of feelings. And there are lots of different visuals for this. This was kind of, the most concise. And so, helping kids to recognize that between, happy and ashamed, there can be very low intensity. These are sometimes things that we don't often pay attention to, good and bad, all the way up to very high. And recognizing that there is kind of this scale of intensity of feelings. And, like I said, it's across the range of the different kind of core emotions. So here's an activity. So again, we don't have as much time, but I wanted to, that this activity is there. It's so we'll do one together, and we're going to look at kind of a replacement. So what are the self-talk obstacles? So this is also in the handout. So this is an example. So this is awful. Obviously we talked about kind of what's going on with the election, right now. A lot of people are feeling this way. So replacement may be, well, I'm definitely building up my patience muscles. I'm able to use, I actually learned about a new, a virtual self-care website that has puzzles, and it has all kind. I literally just found this last night. So I went nuts on it. I did a puzzle. I was playing music as I was doing some schoolwork. You know, they've got some really great resources. So
And
yeah,
I'm just going to jump in for a second to give you a little bit of a time check because these folks,
have to
we
move
need
on.
to finish up about noon and so you've got about 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, we're almost done. So again, you know, I have some other videos. There are lots of different examples. There are social emotional quotients. So what is yours? So there is a self-assessment in the handout. So it's a way for you to look at what are your strengths and areas of needs. Like I said, there are lots of different resources that I included in there. So you can look at any of those and kind of adapt them however you want. This is that adult social emotional quotient self-assessment that you have. So looking at what are the things that apply to me more often, what are the things that don't apply to me or never, you know, and just kind of, again, being aware of those. The more we're aware of it, the more powerful it is. So now the integration, this is kind of, again, I've been talking about this, that this is not something different, that it's just really, the other terms are 21st century learning, culturally responsive practices, college and career ready standards, multi-tier systems of support, all of those things, they all really are the things that we can, the vehicles that we can use to share. This is a great website that you can, you know, go on and set up emotional journals for kids. And this, you know, I just tell you to go on and look at that. That's a pretty neat one. But what we know is that the brain development really supports, the neuroscience supports socio-emotional learning. So again, I've got several videos on here, but you know, we want to make sure that the more we do systematically and just really put it as part of how we operate, it's going to be much more effective. So like I said, there are, I just want to wrap up, and I know I gave you a lot of slides, but I want to just help you to be aware that the social emotional learning, so just to kind of lots of different things that are in here, different kind of brain activities. There are lots of different things that you can use in there. And then, so just some questions to consider as you're planning to look at these things. So what are the student needs? What are the staff needs? What are community attitudes? What are available resources? How will you measure progress? And as I said, there are lots of different resources that are in the handouts. And if not, you can reach out to me. But I appreciate all of your engagement, and just to kind of remember that the cake is so much better when things are all mixed together. So here's my contact info. Again, the link, the handouts will be shared, but feel free to reach out to me, and happy to answer any questions or help with any resources. So thank you very much.